Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here once again with another episode of the 10 books that really helped me to set the foundation for my Freedom Day. And I wanted to share these books with you through a series of videos so that you understand why they're important to me and why you should consider reading these as part of your financial education. So, the second book on my list is The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim is an interesting cat. I originally came across him by the title of this book. And if you know anything about Tim, the whole idea of the book, the whole idea of the title was something he tested using Google AdWords to see what titles got the most response and the most interest. So that's where the 4 Hour Work Week came from. He didn't mean that you're going to have a 4 hour work week. He didn't mean that you were going to quit your job and everything else. What he meant was it was a concept and an idea, and it was an idea that made you want to read the book. Once you got into the book, you understood why it was so important. It was a massively important book in its time. I personally think the concepts of the 4 hour work week and being efficient and traveling the world and using geo arbitrage and all those things really are what has affected the millennial generation and Gen Z, because they really were the first generation that said, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do the whole 40-year work my butt off, work 60, 70 hours a week. I want to be as efficient as possible. I want to get my work done, and I want to be able to do it where and when I want to do it. So, whatever you think about the millennial generation and Gen Z, they have changed the world for the rest of us, like it or not. And a large part of that was because of this book. Now, I will tell you, the 4 Hour Work Week, I own a very tattered copy of the book. I have read it at least once a year. Usually, I wait until vacation time and I'll take it with me on vacation. The reason I do that is there's always something new that I pull from it or that's a good reminder of what I do. So let's get into some of the concepts that are part of the book that I think are important for you and why you should read this. The first part about it, the first part of it is focused on an acronym, DEAL. Definition, elimination, automation, and liberation. That is Tim's concepts of how to get yourself to where you can free yourself. This concept was a major part of the creation of what I call IDEA. It's a philosophy that I use in my own business, and it's part of a video that I've done on this channel called Procrastination for Fun and Profit. It is what I use. It's the filter I use in my business every day. And I think the key concepts that Tim talks about in this book with DEAL are extremely important for somebody that is trying to make that transition from a worker bee to their own person. So the first piece of it is definition. You've really got to define and figure out what's out there. You need to figure out what your goals are. You need to figure out what your plan is, what you're trying to accomplish. And once you've done that, once it's defined and you've set specific numbers, you've set a goal for yourself, then you move on to the elimination phase. What can be removed from your life? Now, one of the things that really the first time I was exposed to this is the 80-20 principle. It was created by an Italian economist. It's called the Pareto Principle. And that 80-20 rule means that 80% of the end results are by 20% of your activities. And this falls throughout history. It falls throughout most things that are out there. If you look at almost anything, 20% of the plants in your garden will produce 80% of the vegetables. I see this in my own gardens. Those of you that follow me online, and I share that, I have 20% of the plants that are producing a ton of things. So it's a physical rule that happens throughout. And we need to look at those 20% of activities that produce the most results. We need to be doing those most often and less of the busy work. So what can you eliminate from your schedule? Automation. What can be automated? What repetitive things can be that you do over and over again that can be automated, where a computer can do that, where artificial intelligence can do that? Whatever it is, automation is key. It is a massive part of what I do in my world, both from the electronic version to the outsourcing version where I hire people overseas that run my operation for me, largely because I'm able to work with them when I'm sleeping, they're working in most cases. So I have basically a 24-hour operation. Liberation is starting to embrace remote work. At the time that this book was written, before 2007, remote work was not as prevalent as it is today. We are now in the post 2000, we're in the post pandemic era. Remote work became the norm and has become, at least in hybrid situations for most people. And that liberation allows you basically to work from anywhere in the world that you want to. The next thing that Tim teaches is income autopilots. We call it passive income, but income autopilots, these things that you can create, whether it's writing a book, creating a course, buying real estate, whatever it is, creating these income autopilots that are working when you're off doing something else. Once again, I don't think it was anything new, but it was things that he adapted and really shared as a part of this. Outsourcing Life, there is a section, and it's worth it for the read. He took an article that a gentleman had written who'd never done outsourcing before, and it's a hilarious article about how he hired out some people from India that basically took his life, took over all the crazy things in his life. And it's worth it for the read. But it was really talking about outsourcing. And this was also not a very common thing. Big companies would outsource, but small individuals and small companies were not outsourcing at that time. Today, it's become much, much more prevalent. I personally use Upwork to find a ton of people that do everything from video editing to managing my podcast to everything else. And once again, they're able to work when I'm sleeping and I'm working when they're sleeping. So we keep my world working 24 hours a day. One of the key things for Tim was he wanted to be able to travel. And so he brought up the concept of geo arbitrage. What is that? It's basically being able to live places in the world where you can maximize the income that you're bringing in. Let's say in your normal life, it costs you $4,000 or $5,000 to live wherever you're living at. You might be able to cut that in half by living in another country. And while you're there, filling the void, filling that, what are you going to do if you're not working? In Tim's case, I think one of his first trips was over to Germany. He kind of vagabonded around Europe for a while and then ended up in Argentina. And one of the key things he wanted to do, that was one of his bucket list items, was he wanted to learn tango. He ended up competing and winning a tango competition. And then he went around the world, did all kinds of goofy, crazy things as a result, but he filled the void. The other piece of it is a key concept here, and the last two I think are extremely important. Embracing failure and fear setting, embracing the chance that you're going to fail at stuff, and that's okay. Fail fast, learn from it, move on to the next thing. But if you don't do it, you're never going to succeed at anything. You're going to sit there. If you're sitting in a cubicle listening to this right now, you're just going to keep sitting in that cubicle and dying just a little bit every day, like I did. I spent 25 years of my life working for other people, whether it was in an office or a cubicle. I sat there and a piece of me died every day, and really liberating myself from those jobs, establishing my companies that I have, growing my wealth, growing my passive income. Every day that I've been an entrepreneur, I've gained back a little bit of that life that I lost in the cubicle. But I just think back to 25 years that I wasted sitting in a cubicle, scared that for me to go out. So the last thing I want to share, and this is something I think is just absolutely one of the cool things, and it's the hardest thing to do because you have to do this yourself, is what are called comfort challenges. And Tim intersperses this throughout the book. But those comfort challenges are doing things just to make yourself uncomfortable so that it forces you to do them. I remember one of these that is hilarious is he did a challenge where he just went out in public and he just stared at people until they would turn away. So he would stare at them until they would look, and then they would turn away. And he's like, okay, Some of this may be a little creepy and strange, but it helped him to get some of these challenges, get some of those fears out of whatever he was doing. So that's the 4 Hour Work Week. I highly recommend it. It's old. It's 2007. The book was written. It was updated, I think, early 2011 ish, but it's not been updated since. But a lot of the concepts in there are still valid today. I would absolutely encourage you to put this one on the reading list for the summer and make sure that you make it part of there. Now, subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you hit the notification button as well so that you'll get these as we go. I'm dropping a whole bunch of these over the next several weeks, sharing my concepts and ideas out of these individual books so that you put them on your reading list for the summer. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you back here the very next time.